The next one we've got is Young Footballer of the Season. So for this one, I've limited it at 25 because we've got a young squad as well. There's quite a few players that could be considered young, but you realize, okay, they are, under 27, I've said as well, because there's so many players in this bracket as well. We'll start with you, Alex. Who have you got for Young Footballer of the Season?
I got to give it to KDH. Played at Luton last year and then comes into Leicester this season and, really fights for his position. And just once he was given that opportunity, he just ran with it. And he just kept on running with it. And no one could catch that. Tielemans showed, moments of excellence, but when it came, if you put, Tielemans and KDH on the platform together, KDH just exceeded all those expectations and just blew anybody's, expectations out of the water. So KDH all the way.
Sounds good to me. Glenn, have you got anybody else, or would you agree with Alex?
I think it's pretty clear cut, to be honest. I mean, maybe you can stick in like a Fofana or a Justin in there. Obviously, Fofana coming back from his injury and not being able to show too much, but when he did come back was phenomenal. But KDH has shown us all right from pre-season training what he was going to do. I mean, he came in. All the things I saw online was of him doing like the bleep tests and things like that, and absolutely smashing everybody else. He'd previous to that, he'd been out, as Dan said, he'd been out on loan, came back, absolutely smashed the pre-season, bided his time, and was then given his chance mainly through injuries, but then making it that Rodgers couldn't really drop him. I think one of my favourite KDH moments, it didn't even involve him being on the ball. It was when Maddison equalised against PSV, and he ran over for the celebration, almost caught a beer from the PSV fans, and then goaded them to come on then, forgetting for a second that he wasn't a City fan in the stands and that he was actually a player, which was brilliant. But I think I couldn't look any further than KDH for this.
Fair enough. Dan, have you got anything else or any other people you'd be interested in mentioning? Or
I mean, I'd love to give mentions to Thomas and stuff, but he's struggled this year. So I mean, the only real option is Dewsbury Hall. I mean, I'm not going to sing the Oasis song, but he's the man.
He really is. And again, Fofana, I think if he had a full season, could have pushed KDH quite close, and it would have been like the previous award where it was between two people. Because I genuinely think Justin as well he's had a good start, but again, I'd agree there. KDH should have been Young Footballer of the Season for me as well, and just thoroughly deserved. And hopefully, it's not a theme going too much, not because we don't think he's a great player, just because let's try and give it to other people if we can as well. The next thing I've got is the achievement of the season. I mean, there isn't too many considering both competitions were not great. So, Glenn, we'll start with you first as well. What would you consider your achievement of the season?
I wanted to try and look at sort of like out of the sort of a bit left field with some of these, but I couldn't, like with the young player with KDH, I couldn't really see past the fact of the Europa Conference League quarter-final and the fact of winning that. I'd rather say that than the achievement of making it to the semi-final. I know we did do that by virtue of winning the quarter-final, but it was the fact of winning the quarter-final because we let ourselves down, I think, in the semi. But winning that quarter-final was great. After the disappointment of being knocked out of the Europa League, we seemed to accept that the Conference League for what it was, and we then tried to sort of like embrace it somewhat. Because some of the stories coming out at the beginning, I mean, there was pictures of the fact of dogs crapping on the field in various places. And it's like, this is what the Europa Conference League is about. And you're all like, oh my God, really? But we embraced it. And then as the competition went through, there was, bigger and more difficult teams to get to. And of course, then we had PSV. So after the goalless draw at the KP, we had it all to do then in Eindhoven. And we didn't have it great in the first half, but I mean, did okay. But the second half, we had the fight and the spirit, and that we seem to have lacked for many other games around that sort of time and a few weeks before in the season. Of course, the flick from Perez, the byline that set up Madders, the teamwork for the Ricardo winner, enduring those last few minutes, the limbs in the plastic enclosure after the goal and the final whistle. I think all of that adds up to the achievement for us over the at the end of the season.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That makes sense to me. It's one of the ones I've got down. Alex, is there anything else, or would you agree there? Because again, I think Glenn's bit up to the quarterfinal / the semi-final, kind of all included, kind of in one. But would 8th in the Premier League top that, in your opinion?
Not really. Well, yes and no. If I'm going to just kind of talk about that, because for me personally, I remember talking about how we were kind of the way our performance was kind of we were kind of showcasing in the middle of the season. I was kind of expecting a bottom of the table finish, like 16th through 17th. So the fact that we finished 8th and we were only a few points off of European football was kind of mind blowing. So in the sense of like that, you got to kind of look at that in a positive and be like, was it the best season? Definitely not. But like, there's a lot of positives that you can take out of this, being like, we could have finished drastically lower. So finishing 8th, told me at the start of the season, wouldn't have been happy with it, because I think we were all expecting European football. But now that I look at how the season ended, 8th is pretty good. And I think that's an achievement in itself, because I think we, there's times in the season where Newcastle were ahead of us in the table, which was just absolutely horrendous when you actually think about it. So the fact that we're, we finish 8th, a few points off of, Man United and whatnot, I consider it a success in that way.
Fair enough. No, makes sense. Dan, over to you. What would you see as your final achievement of the season?
I'd have to give it to more to Glenn's side as far as making it to that semifinal. I know it's the least of the European competitions, and like you said, everybody kind of dogged it down when we dropped in there from the Europa League. But it's a cup competition, and you're playing against, like, by the time we got into the group stages, we were playing against class outfits like PSV and Rennes and eventually Roma, and you want to win things like that, and getting to the semifinal of a competition like that is no joke. So, I mean, I felt pretty good about that. I was really looking forward to seeing us in the final, but, have to do better next year. We want more European football. I think that was want to keep stuff like that coming to Leicester City.
And hopefully so in the future, especially with not having Europe and seeing what Arsenal have done with the young squad and what they can do having one game a week. And I know they fell at the last second in getting Champions League football, but it is potential and it is blueprint that we could do that in the future. I'm really looking forward to that one as well. So I'd agree with you as well. So we'd give the achievement of the season to however you want to look at it, quarterfinal or the semi-final of the Europa Conference League, I should say. Hopefully we'll be in the Europa League soon as well.